Hello, good morning, or afternoon, night, whatever. Today it is time for me to talk about my May reading. And I read a lot in May. May was a very successful reading month for little old me. I think I finished 7 books, which is a lot for me for sure. And they were truly a variety. So let's begin. Let's just go down the list here. The Samurai by Shisaku Endo, who is apparently a famous author, but I've never heard of him. He wrote the book Silence, which I have heard of the Martin Scorsese movie from a few years ago. But anyway, The Samurai, historical fiction, okay? And basically it is about a Japanese samurai who is part of an envoy to Mexico from Japan. So essentially it's set in the, I'm bad at years, the 1600s, I think. And at this time, Japan, the rulers of Japan, very down on Christianity. But there was at least one high up guy who was just like, oh, well, I control this part of Japan, and even though I also don't really like Christianity, I'm willing to, I want more trade relations with these Christian countries because money. And so he sends these envoys, and this samurai, whose name I don't remember it, was a real person. These were real people, and it is historical fiction, but it does take a lot from actual events that happened. Unfortunately, there's just things that we can't know because they weren't recorded, but it's interesting to know that something like this happened. And so the main characters are the samurai, and he's one of several samurai, and the thing is that these guys, I don't know what we picture when we think of samurai, but it essentially is just sort of a class of, well, it's a class, right? So the samurai own a certain amount of land that's been granted to their family from some king or something. But there's a lord above them who really is the guy making decisions and ordering them around, and they have peasants beneath them, but really the samurai in question, who is the main character, he lives in this shitty land in the marsh, and his desire is to get back the land that used to belong to his family, which his father lost. It was just taken from him. Whoever's in charge of all this was just never mind, you get crappier land over here. And he doesn't even really care himself so much, but his uncle keeps bothering him about it, and he's like, well, it would probably be good for my family. So that's why he even agrees to do this. I mean, not that he really gets a choice, but that's his motivator, is hoping that when he comes back, he'll be in a better position. But the other main character is this Catholic priest who has been in Japan for 10 years, and he wants to convert Japan to Christianity, which obviously they don't like very much. But so he has his own desires and stuff. His motivation, he wants to become the bishop of Japan. He wants to be assigned Japan as his mission. And he's constantly annoyed that the Jesuits are largely the voices behind whether they should try to convert Japan or not. And because they screwed some stuff up, he's that's why the Japanese hate Christianity so much. Anyway, it's a book. A lot of it is about traveling. They have to go all the way to Mexico, which I called Nueva España all the time in the book because it wasn't called Mexico yet back then. And then they actually travel to Spain, and eventually they meet the Pope, and it's pretty wild. I think the most interesting thing in the book, well, okay, there were 2 things that were interesting. One was just seeing the outside world through the eyes of the samurai, who has never left Japan, of course, and now is, all the way on the other side of the world. and also seeing it from his perspective. And then the other interesting thing was like following his feelings about Christianity. Because like the thing is that at some point they decide that they have to convert, but they don't really believe in any of it. They just need to kind of like make everyone think that they do so that they can talk to the Pope or whatever. So like his like relationship with the concept of Jesus is just really interesting. And I was expecting it to be more like a genuine conversion story just because that's what it sounds like in the description. I was like, okay. But that's not really what happens at all. So it was interesting for sure. Also, it does not have a happy ending, like, because basically the policy on international trade, etc. in Japan changes like the minute they leave. So even though they're not aware of it, like their mission is, spoilers, like a complete waste of time. But I read it. It was on my little list for the year, my 20 books list. So that's why I read it, and it was different. It was interesting. All right, next, Murder in Montparnasse by Carrie Greenwood. This one, boop, I actually own. Holy shit! I read a book that I own. So actually, this is my mother's. I bought it for her for Christmas several years ago, but somehow when she finishes reading Christmas books, they end up in my house. I don't know. And this is one of the books on which Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries TV show is based. And I have watched that show. It was on Netflix, at least at some point. It's an Australian TV show and it's fantastic. So I was like, all right, fine, I'll read this book. Okay. So all of that said, I think that this is maybe not the place to start. This is book 12, which I wasn't really aware of, but I definitely knew it wasn't the first one. And there's definitely an expectation in this book that you know who the characters are and like their relationships with one another, which for the most part wasn't a problem for me because, like I said, I've seen the show. Some of them were a bit different. Jack Robinson, for example, is definitely like not a love interest character in these books. I assume that doesn't change because he appears to be middle-aged and happily married. But, you know, so that's too bad because that was one of my favorite things in the show, but whatever. The actual plot of this book is Franny Fisher is a lady detective. It's the 1920s in Australia. And in this one, well, there's several different plots. Like there are several different mysteries going on, but the main one is that these guys that she knows who do jobs for her, sometimes Bert and Cess, a couple of their friends die under mysterious circumstances, and they think they're being murdered. And it turns out to have a connection with a day that they all spent in Paris in 1918, right after the war. Basically, this group of Australian soldiers who were supposed to be passing through Paris to another place, but decided to stay for a day just to have, you know, some fun. And they witness a murder. I thought that was kind of funny too, because it's like, they're like, oh yeah, I mean, I don't know. The thing is though, I watched the episode again that is based on this book. And it's even sillier in the episode because in the episode they like literally see, like, they're like, oh, that guy got murdered. And then they're like, maybe that was the connection. Maybe that's the issue. In the book, at least they were all off their asses drunk at the time that they were in that train station. So the fact that they don't really remember what was going on, like, makes sense. Anyway, it's a pretty good book. Like, if you want a mystery novel, maybe don't start with that one though. Maybe start at the beginning of the series. I don't know. I have one of the other books, but it's actually from even later in the series, so we'll see. But Franny is a fun character. She's very freewheeling. She has her boyfriend. She has her she has a great time. I mentioned the boyfriend because he's a fun character, Lin Chung. There's a whole lot of stuff in this book with him and his fiance because he's getting married now, and then like, anyway. So, let's just move on. Okay. I read Strange Bedfellows by Ina Park. Or perhaps Dr. Ina Park. She doesn't call herself that on the book cover, but she must be a doctor. She's a gynecologist. This book is nonfiction, and it is about... it is about sexually transmitted infections. And it was interesting, because like, I was like, oh, okay, I don't know that much about this stuff, so it was interesting to learn. I don't know, like, as I was listening to it, I kept hoping that it would talk a bit more about the history of some of these diseases. And then I kept hoping it would talk a bit more about the actual biological, like, way that these diseases function. But like, listen, that's just me being like, tell me about the bacteria. The actual point of the book is to talk a lot more about just like the social, I guess, implications of the diseases and stuff like that. Like, it does talk about the history, and it's interesting. It really is. Like, yeah, she goes from relatively minor things like genital warts to pretty fucking major things like AIDS and a lot of stuff in between. And she talks, there's just an entire chapter on pubic hair. Did you know most people in America shave it? I didn't know that. Anyway, like, I'm like, why? Okay, that, we've revealed too much. Let's move on. It was a good book. Okay. Beyond the Black Door by A.M. Strickland. So this one, okay, so this one got on my radar a few years ago as yet another young adult book with a asexual protagonist. I did really like this one though. Like, I have to give it the credit. And the thing is, it's fantasy, and young adult fantasy is just not my cup of tea. But at least this one isn't 700 pages long and the beginning of a series, or part of a series. Like, it's one book and we're done. So that's good. Young adult fantasy, the thing that I tend not to like about it, beyond some weakness in world building, which, like, fine, I think you just have to expect that from young adult, is that a lot of them have love triangle plots. This one did not, so, like, that's why it was good. No, okay, so the plot of this book is that this girl has the ability to walk through people's souls. It's a little like mind reading, but what she's trained by her mother as a child is to walk through their souls. Their souls look like houses or buildings, which is kind of interesting. And as the book goes on, she realizes, okay, there are ways to get more information out of people this way, just my mother didn't teach me those things yet. So it does have a use, but her mother tells her one thing she must never do is open this mysterious black door that she always sees in people's souls. It's following her around, and her mother's like, you better not open that. And I'm like, okay, well, okay. Naturally, as soon as her mother gets murdered, she opens the door. And it turns out that there's like some guy in there. And, oh, also he might be a physical manifestation of the void. Okay, so, like, it's fun. Her being asexual is relevant to the storyline, and actually, like, does affect her decisions, which, this was another case, I think, where I liked the portrayal of asexuality. Like, yeah. Also, there's a trans man character in this book who is also very interesting because he, like, well, is very closeted, and so even after we find out that he's a man, the main character still refers to him with the same name and like she, her pronouns, just because that's what he wants. I mean, I'm saying he, but he doesn't know me. Who cares? And by the very end of the book, it's like, okay, we've transitioned over. But that's interesting, and that's in it. Just, I like that character a lot. And then honestly, like, it got me emotionally at some points, and I thought it was quite well written. So, wow, we found a young adult book I liked. Congratulations to this book. Like, do I think about it, even though it's been less than a month since I read it? No, but it was good. All right, oh boy, fuck. Here we go. It's time to talk about Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. Yeah. It is time. It is time. Lolita was another book from my list, and it is a book that I intended, you know, just I was curious about it. You know, I was like, I want a book that's a bit of a classic. I mean, maybe it's a modern classic. It's from the 50s. I don't really know what the cutoff is, but, you know, a bit of an American classic book, which of course is massively fucked up. It delivered. Okay, so fuck this book. So first of all, I listened to the majority of it back in, like, I think it was April. Yeah. And then I listened to the last couple of hours of the audiobook this month or in May, because that's when I got it back finally. And I'm like, all right, we're finishing this. Oh my God. It's not a drill. We're finishing it. And at some point you get really tired of this motherfucker, okay? You're just like, Humbert, will you please shut the fuck up? And he just keeps talking. And he is so annoying, and like, he really leans into the whole I'm a European in America thing. It's like, shut the fuck up. Also, this is a road trip book for some reason. There's an extended period of the book where he and, I just forgot her name. Dolores, that's it. I was like, Dorothy? No. Dolores, travel around the country, which I mean, what? It was really an interesting, like, perspective to be reading from, I guess, because, like, you've got this European character written by, I don't know, Nabokov was obviously from Russia, but I don't know how long he lived in Russia. But I know he lived in America certainly his entire adult life, right? As far as I know, right? That's it. That's my extent of my knowledge about Nabokov. And he wrote in English. So, it's an American book, but he has a unique perspective. So just the way that he writes about all the little towns and the little, like hotels that they stay in and everything is interesting, definitely. Of course, then there's the creepy child molester pedophile of it all. Yeah. It was gross. And I mean, very clearly intended to be gross. I'm not sure how you could read this book and be like, ah, yes, this is a book about how he is truly in love with this girl. Like, what? No. I mean, it's complicated. Like, Lolita isn't over here saying, like, that she did not at all like him at all in any sense. And also, for some reason, I thought that she died at the end of this, and she, like, 100% doesn't, so I don't know why I thought that. But, okay, so the story is that he's in prison, and he's writing this memoir and being fucking annoying about it, and he's all like, oh, I changed people's names. And he's like, I came up with a fake name for myself. It's like, fine, who cares? But, it's the story of kind of leading up to why he's in prison, and eventually find out he's in prison because he killed someone. But he talks about his obsession with, like, 12-year-olds, and he has this whole other category that he puts attractive to him girl children in. It's fucked up. But okay, so then he, like, oh, hello, sunlight. Okay, so I'm sorry. I cannot talk. He meets this woman that he is going to be staying at their house for the summer as a renter, discovers that she has this daughter who he is incredibly into, and he just kind of wants to, okay, well, what he wants from Dolores really escalates over time, because he'll be like, oh, I would be content just to be in her presence, but then, like, that keeps kind of escalating. Eventually, the mother dies in a car accident. She gets hit by a car. That was an interesting part, because I was like, I'm curious, because, like, there were witnesses, so I guess he must not have pushed her, but, like, I wonder what he's not telling us nonetheless. And then he doesn't want Dolores to know. And she's been at, like, summer camp, so he picks her up and is all like, oh no, your mother is very sick. And then they go traveling, and then eventually she kind of, like, figures out, okay, or he is like, oh, she died. I don't know. It's dumb from his part. But it's just really disturbing. All the bits you read kind of between the lines of, like, how unhappy she is and stuff. So it is a very well-written book. And I figure, like, people should read it for sure. I recommend it, but, like, know what you're getting into, because it's also incredibly fucked up. As I was curious as I was reading it exactly how far we were going to go, because, like, I know that he rapes her a lot, and I was like, is that going to be on page? And in a metaphorical sense, it was, like, once, but other than that, it wasn't. But he would talk about it, you know. But so it was just like, anyway, it was a lot. It was a lot. It was, like, difficult to have to listen to it every day. It was like, all right, actually, I need a break from this fucked up book. But anyway, fuck, I'm taking too long. Okay, it was a good book though. It's very well written. All right, another list book, because I was like, we gotta bust them out. Second Foundation by Isaac Asimov. So, it's another Foundation book. It's book 3. What even fucking happened in this? I read too many books this month. All right, well, okay. So the Second Foundation, the idea being that the first 2 books were about the Foundation, but there's a mysterious second Foundation out there. And the second book ends with the character of the mule, who's kind of taken down the remnants of the Empire, and he's sort of taken down the Foundation, almost being like, I'm gonna find the second Foundation. I'm gonna find it. So the first part of this book is about him attempting to find it. The second part of the book is set like 100 years later, and is about some other people trying to find the second Foundation. So the second Foundation, it turns out, is based on a lot of psychological principles, and they have like mind affecting powers almost, like they can persuade and influence other people's minds. It was all right. It was interesting. I was like, okay, I was definitely curious as to where the second Foundation was hiding, and I had my guesses. And it kept me reading because I was like, I want to know. I want to get to the end and find out. Again, I still don't really understand why people are so obsessed with Foundation. I don't know why it's a big sci-fi classic series that gets recommended a lot. Because it really is like a series of short stories, and almost like literally is a series of short stories set in this, you know, over such a long period of time. You can't get attached to the characters, and it's interesting as far as a world building exercise, I guess, but like, I can't care that much, you know? But I'm gonna keep going because it's good enough to, you know, keep me interested, I guess. I wanna know. Like, I wanna know, really, at what point this becomes fantastically good, if ever. So, I'm gonna keep going. Final book. The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. So this one. I love me some Becky Chambers, and this is apparently the final book of the Wayfarer series, which is a series loosely connected, really. Like, there's mentions of characters in one book and another, but it does not have an ongoing plot. You could probably read it in whatever order. This one was quite good. Basically, it's about a group of travelers who are all stopped off on this planet that is kind of at a junction, and you have to wait around for your turn to fly on in whatever direction you want to go on the space highways or whatever. And so this group of people all have decided separately that they're going to stop over at this specific dome on this shit world. The world has nothing going for it except that there are a lot of truck stops, basically. So they're like, well, we're going to stop at this one. And then, unfortunately, a bit of a problem occurs. There is an issue with the satellite system, and a bunch of stuff gets damaged, so they're stuck there for several days. And they can't leave the planet, and they have to just stay down there with each other. And like most Becky Chambers Wayfarer stuff, it's less about plot and more about the characters interacting with one another and talking and getting to know each other, and I liked it. All of them are aliens this time. So that's interesting. The connection to the other books is that, what's her name? Ashby is the guy who owns the ship in the first book, his girlfriend, who is an alien. Okay. She's in this, and she's great. Yes, I don't know, it was interesting. The characters had a lot of, like, interesting stuff going on, and conflicts with one another, and also just they work together, and they become friends, and it's, like, emotional. And, I definitely found, this is gonna be, I don't know if this is gonna be an unpopular opinion. I don't know if this is gonna be, like, an unpopular opinion, but, I didn't like Speaker very much. And I know, oh God, it's so irritating because it's like, listen, I feel sorry for her. But the thing is that I just didn't, okay. So there's this part where that part, if you've read the book, this is like for if you've read the book, I want to talk about this with somebody. So there's the part where Pei finally says, you know, why don't you like me, to Speaker? And Speaker's like, well, I have an issue with what you do. And she's like, I literally just like bring supplies to people who are getting their asses bombed out in their colonies. And then Speaker's like, well, you know, like, I would just, obviously it's bad that that's happening, but I would question, like, why is it happening? Like, why are the Trosk, or whatever the fuck they were called, these other aliens, like, why are they so mad that they're on these planets? And she's just like, oh, the whole thing about, like, taking planets, and it's all just gonna, you know, I was just mad about it, because I was like, listen, you might be philosophically correct, but, like, you're bringing it up to the absolute fucking wrong audience. Like, somebody who has just been out there and seen the damage. And then, like, also, you just don't get it. Like, no offense, girly, it sucks that your ancestors got their planet taken away from them, and that there's nowhere else you've been able to find to live because you breathe methane like a bunch of weirdos. But you don't get it, okay? You don't have a planet, so you don't get it. And I was kind of wondering if the bit at the end where, Riva, what was his name? I don't remember. Sent Speaker and her sister the like holodeck program thing for their brains, so that they could actually experience a planet that they could walk on without having to be in mech suits all the time. I was like, is this like this moment of understanding, of actually experiencing having a planet and having a moment of being like, you know, like, this is such an overwhelming experience, makes me wonder whether that just, she just didn't get it, you know? I don't know. What am I talking about? I was bothered by her. But, like, it was a good book, so. So no, seriously, it was, though. There was a lot of different things going on in it. And, like, listen, if you want your books to have a plot, this is perhaps not the book for you, because the plot here is very thin. I have told you it already. There is one thing of conflict that happens later where one of the characters is injured. I won't get into it, but then they have to all work together to deal with that. Okay, fine. But, you know, mostly it is about the characters interacting and getting to know each other and talking a lot. And I enjoy that. I think it's very kind of like, it's like relaxing. It's just nice to sink into some world building conversations and have a good time. I don't think it was my favorite of her books. I think I would say that my favorite, that's tough, either the second or third of the series. Because probably the third, because I felt like all these characters in the third book thematically really fit well together. They're like kind of issues that they were all going through, trying to figure out like how they fit in or what they wanted to do with their lives and like in their society. And I also think the Exodans, which is the humans who live in their like big spaceships that travel through space, are really interesting. Well, they don't travel through space, do they? No, they used to. They're like generation ships, but now they just orbit a planet, I think. But anyway, yeah, like that's probably my favorite. But this was a good book, definitely. I always need to read more Becky Chambers. She's got a couple of these like monk and robot novellas, which I don't know anything about, but I'm gonna read them at some point. Okay. That's the month, right? Like, it was generally positive. Nothing mind-blowing, but generally positive and interesting and a variety of things. And I got some list reading done. And I finally finished Lolita. And that's kind of it. Like, that's it. Tune in next month for more. More of same.